Every day, we see the darker side of the world around us. We witness how people can hurt others in ways that are hard to understand. It's a sad part of life, but it's something we can't ignore. As someone who dives into the world of crime, I'm here to share the most shocking stories and try to understand what drives people to do such things. I'm Michael, and today, I've got another unreal true crime story for you. It started as a normal morning in Brisbane. Hannah Clark buckled her three kids into the car, ready for the school run. But within minutes, everything changed. A man washing his car heard Hannah's desperate cries. A passing driver saw her, covered in flames, trying to escape. A neighbor rushed over with a fire extinguisher, then watched in horror as the car exploded. What was happening? Why was Hannah screaming for her children? And who was the man beside her, holding a jerry can of fuel? This wasn't an accident. It was something far worse. And the terrifying truth? It had been building for years. Hannah Clark was born on September 8, 1988, in Brisbane, Australia, to her loving parents, Sue and Lloyd. From an early age, she was known for her warm, outgoing personality. Always full of energy, Hannah had a natural ability to make people smile. Even as a young girl, she dreamed of one day becoming a mother. She shared a close bond with her younger brother, always looking out for him with the protective instincts of an older sibling. A talented athlete, Hannah excelled in trampoline gymnastics, representing her state at just 16 years old. Her leadership skills shone through during her final year of school when she was chosen as school captain, a position of responsibility given to students who serve as role models for their peers. After graduation, she pursued her passion for working with children, teaching youth gymnastics at the Police Citizens Youth Club. It was at her work that 20-year-old Hannah crossed paths with Rowan Baxter, a 31-year-old who would later change the course of her life. Rowan Baxter was born on May 9, 1977, in New Zealand. His childhood was turbulent, and his early years were marked by instability. His father was incarcerated when he was still young, a traumatic event that shaped his upbringing. Relatives recalled Rowan as a volatile child with a troubling tendency toward cruelty. A cousin even admitted to being fearful of him, attributing his behavior to a deep-rooted family pattern of misogyny. Despite his difficult upbringing, Rowan pursued a career in sports. He played rugby for Tauranga Boys College before securing a contract with the New Zealand Warriors National Rugby League team in 2005. Though he was technically on the team, he never played an official game, earning only a modest contract of $10,000 per year. Despite this, he frequently referred to himself as a former professional rugby player, using the title to bolster his image in both personal and professional settings. People who knew Rowan personally described him as intensely competitive, controlling, and short-tempered. He had an overwhelming need to dominate those around him and refused to accept rejection. Before meeting Hannah, Rowan had been married and had a son from that relationship. His first marriage began when he was 18, and his wife was just 16. By the time their son was 2, Rowan's controlling nature had become unbearable. His wife wanted to leave him, but he refused to let her go, resorting to stalking and threats. In a chilling moment, he told her he had prepared a hosepipe in his car and had contemplated a grim fate for both himself and their child. Feeling trapped, she chose to stay in the relationship despite her fears. In 2008, while Hannah was teaching gymnastics, Rowan's son attended her class. This was where Hannah and Rowan first met. Though he was still married at the time, he pursued Hannah, claiming that his marriage was already over and that he was merely cohabiting with his wife for their son's sake. Just a few months into their affair, Rowan officially ended his marriage, moving out and agreeing to a co-parenting arrangement. However, his aggressive tendencies persisted. He would still threaten his ex-wife whenever parenting disagreements arose. About 6 months into their relationship, Hannah became pregnant. While she was inclined to keep the baby, Rowan pressured her into terminating the pregnancy, arguing that she was too young to take on such responsibility. In October 2012, Hannah and Rowan married, and at the time she was 14 weeks pregnant with their first child. Shortly after their wedding, Rowan stopped paying child support for his son from his previous marriage. On April 10, 2013, their daughter Aaliyah was born. She was a bright, articulate child with a love for reading and a strong moral compass. Despite her young age, she recognized the way her father treated her mother and was unafraid to stand up to him. In January 2015, the couple, both passionate about fitness, opened a gym named Integrate Gym. Although Hannah's parents and another investor funded the business, it ultimately struggled financially. Around this time, their second daughter, Liana, was born on March 19, 2015. She was known for her gentle nature, often acting as a peacemaker within the family. She bore a striking resemblance to Hannah and would try to comfort her father during his angry outbursts. The couple's third and youngest child, Trey, was born on December 4, 2016. A devoted mama's boy, Trey loved to run and play, but was happiest when he was by his mother's side. As the years passed, Rowan's behavior became increasingly controlling and aggressive. His possessiveness over Hannah intensified. Rowan further restricted Hannah's independence by insisting on a joint Facebook account, preventing her from having her own. Over time, he isolated her from her once close-knit family, limiting her contact with them. His controlling nature extended to their children as well. If they didn't clean up fast enough, he would throw their toys away. He canceled activities they were excited about as a way to punish Hannah. On one occasion, after an argument, Rowan left the house with the children. Upset, Hannah called her mother to vent. Later, Rowan confronted her, reciting the entire conversation word for word. When questioned about how he knew, he casually told a coworker that he had accidentally left the phone recording. The coworker expressed concern, warning him that secretly recording Hannah without her consent was wrong, but Rowan dismissed it. Rowan also imposed his will on Hannah in their intimate relationship, demanding daily compliance. If she resisted, he would start arguments, making life unbearable. In one particularly alarming incident, he smashed her watch in a fit of rage before storming out. Terrified that he was about to harm himself, Hannah called her mother in distress. Fearing the worst, her parents drove around Brisbane searching for him. When he finally returned home, Rowan claimed he had driven to a church parking lot and had nearly ended his life. By November 2019, Hannah had reached her breaking point. Desperate to escape, she contacted a family violence resource center, expressing her fears and uncertainty about how to leave Rowan safely. Convinced that he was monitoring her, she worked with the center to create an exit strategy. The plan was put into motion in December 2019. Taking only the essentials, Hannah picked up Aaliyah from school and went straight to her best friend's house. She left her phone in her car, suspecting Rowan was tracking her. The next day, she relocated to her parents' home. On December 4th, Rowan reached out to Relationships Australia, an organization that provides support for families and individuals in crisis. They offered him a counseling session scheduled for December 10th, but he never confirmed nor attended the appointment. 10 days later, on December 14th, he visited his doctor and disclosed that Hannah had left him, taking the children. He admitted to struggling with control issues, breaking down in tears as he spoke of regret over his actions. He returned for a mental health consultation on December 16th and was prescribed temazepam, a medication typically used for insomnia. Meanwhile, Hannah sought legal protection. On December 6th, she approached the police, where she was advised to take out a domestic violence order against Rowan. However, she hesitated, afraid that taking legal action would escalate his behavior. Despite her fears, Hannah continued to communicate with Rowan, hoping he would maintain a relationship with their children. He manipulated her, repeatedly telling her to think of the kids and implying that she was harming them by leaving. He also began telling Hannah's parents that she was mentally unstable and falsely insisted that he had done nothing wrong. This led to an exhausting back-and-forth battle. Rowan would promise to return the children, only to change his mind at the last minute, sending Hannah into a panic. His harassment escalated. Just as he had done in his previous marriage, he began showing up unannounced, letting himself into her parents' home and stalking her. On December 26, 2019, Rowan was scheduled to return the children after having them for the day. However, when Hannah arrived to pick them up, he threw Liana into the front seat of his car and sped off. A bystander, alarmed by what they witnessed, flagged down a nearby police vehicle. The officers spoke with Hannah, but because there were no formal custody orders in place, they were legally unable to intervene. They attempted to contact Rowan and even visited his home, but he was nowhere to be found. Later that evening, he called Hannah via FaceTime, making a demand. Unless she ended an alleged affair, he would not return Liana. At her wit's end, Hannah contacted her lawyer, who drafted a formal letter demanding Liana's return. The police, growing increasingly concerned, decided to move forward with issuing a domestic violence order on Hannah's behalf, regardless of whether she was ready to file one herself. Then, officers located Rowan at his home as he was placing Liana into his car. They informed him of the court order, which prohibited him from coming within 300 feet of Hannah or the children until a court hearing could determine permanent arrangements. The police then took Liana into custody and returned her to Hannah. Rowan was to have no contact with them until January 4, 2020, when they were all due in court. During a welfare check, officers noted that Liana appeared fearful. Since the abduction, she had developed severe separation anxiety, always keeping her mother within sight. Authorities recommended that Hannah take the children to a specialist service, child-aware psychology, for support. However, they never attended. As part of the police proceedings, Hannah provided a detailed statement exposing the abuse she had endured. She disclosed that Rowan had pressured her into sleeping with him every night while degrading her. He would belittle her, telling her she was repulsive and comparing intimacy with her to, in his words, having sex with a bucket. Hannah also revealed that she had long feared for her life and the safety of her children. Rowan had spoken in chilling detail about a plan to kill his ex-wife, their son, and himself. This made Hannah deeply afraid that he would try something similar with her and their children. There was further evidence of Rowan's concerning behavior on social media. In multiple videos he had posted, he played dangerously rough with the children, sometimes outright violently. In one particularly distressing clip, he forced them into an ice bath while little Trey sobbed uncontrollably. Despite all this, Rowan continued to manipulate the narrative. Around the same time that Hannah filed her statement, he contacted the police, claiming he was the one in fear of her. On December 29, 2019, Rowan attended his first counseling session as part of his supposed mental health treatment. According to the notes from the session, he admitted to struggling with jealousy and acknowledged that Hannah had left him due to his controlling behavior. However, no proper risk assessment for family violence was conducted. The session primarily focused on basic coping techniques, such as breathing exercises, failing to address the severity of the situation. His mental health evaluation suggested that he was experiencing moderate depression and anxiety, but he denied having any thoughts of harming himself or others. On December 31st, Rowan returned for another counseling session, where he disclosed that a protection order had been issued against him. He insisted that Hannah had fabricated everything and that he was devastated about being unable to see his children. Session notes from that day indicate that he and the counselor discussed the emotional strain of being separated from his kids, yet once again, no formal risk assessment was conducted. Rowan continued attending counseling sessions, returning on January 6th. This time, he complained that their gym had shut down and blamed Hannah for discussing their personal affairs, which he believed had tarnished his reputation. He expressed a desire for joint custody of the children. Despite the escalating situation, no risk assessment was conducted, and the session merely focused on strategies to help Rowan adjust, such as engaging in new activities. On January 8th, their case went to court. Rowan contested the domestic violence order, but the ruling ultimately favored Hannah. The court determined that Rowan was prohibited from committing any acts of family violence, exposing the children to harm, approaching within 300 feet of Hannah's residence, or contacting her for anything unrelated to the children. Undeterred, Rowan sought legal advice from a men's legal service on January 17th. He told them that he feared Hannah planned to take the children and disappear, cutting him out of their lives forever. At the same time, his behavior became more alarming. He began appearing at the same coffee shops and shopping centers as Hannah, seemingly by coincidence, but too often to be accidental. She started to suspect that he had planted a tracking device on her vehicle. Rowan's surveillance of Hannah escalated further when he attended another counseling session on January 21st. There, he claimed he was being unfairly labeled as mentally unstable to limit his access to his children. Determined to fight the domestic violence order, Rowan's lawyer submitted a letter to the court arguing that Hannah had only sought the order to regain custody of Liana. On January 23rd, the court finalized custody arrangements, granting Hannah full custody while allowing Rowan alternating weekends with the children. Every other week, they would stay with him from Thursday to Friday, with shared holiday arrangements and scheduled FaceTime calls. All handovers were to take place at Hannah's parents' home. Despite the court's ruling, the children were visibly affected by the situation. They frequently expressed reluctance to see their father, particularly Aaliyah. During one overnight visit, Aaliyah called Hannah in tears, saying they were driving somewhere, but she didn't know where. On January 31st, Rowan dropped off Trey later than their agreed-upon custody time. As Hannah unbuckled her son from the car, she noticed explicit photos of herself left in plain view. Shocked, she grabbed the pictures and turned to go inside, but Rowan suddenly got out of the car and twisted her wrist behind her back. Alarmed, Hannah's mother immediately called the police. Rowan, however, denied any wrongdoing and attempted to file a domestic violence order against Hannah in retaliation. A doctor later confirmed that Hannah had suffered a sprained wrist and placed it in a splint. She reported the assault and the violation of the domestic violence order to the police, but when officers attempted to speak with Rowan, he refused to answer any questions without legal representation. At the same time, Rowan's life was unraveling. He lost his job as a personal trainer at a local gym, and Hannah's lawyers informed his legal team that, due to the recent incident, She would no longer be following the parenting agreement, meaning Rowan would no longer see the children. Consumed by anger, Rowan saw himself as the victim. His inability to recognize his own behavior only fueled his resentment toward Hannah. Despite the breach of the domestic violence order, police chose not to take him into custody immediately, instead issuing him a notice to appear in court. He was also cited for common assault for injuring Hannah's wrist. On February 17th, Rowan visited a hardware store and purchased zip ties, a jerry can, and denatured alcohol. The next day, he filled the jerry can with 5 liters of gasoline. While making these purchases, he also bought 3 Kinder Surprise eggs and some lollipops. At 3:28 p.m. on February 18th, he called Youth and Family Services, inquiring about a men's support program. 30 minutes later, he made another call to a men's helpline asking about the same program. Later that evening, at 6:25 p.m., he called a friend, sobbing, claiming he couldn't see his children. That night, during a scheduled FaceTime call with his children, he said nothing. Instead, he just sat in silence, crying. Hannah sensed imminent danger. She confided in her mother, saying she needed to write a will because if Rowan killed her, he would go to prison, and someone would need to take care of the children. She also expressed her fears to a friend at the gym, saying she believed Rowan would hurt the kids, or worse. Her worst fears would soon become reality. On the morning of February 19th, 2020, Hannah and her mother went to the gym as part of their usual routine. Afterward, Hannah returned home at 6:20 a.m. before heading back out to grab coffee for herself and her mom. She then sat on her mother's bed, sipping her drink as her mother prepared for work. The children were nearby. At 7:20 a.m., Sue kissed her daughter and grandchildren goodbye, unaware it would be the last time she would ever see them alive. Hannah loaded her 3 children into the car to take Aaliyah and Liana to school. Trey was secured in his car seat in the middle, while Liana sat behind the passenger side. Just as Hannah started the engine, Rowan suddenly appeared, jumping into the passenger seat. He held a jerry can filled with gasoline and ordered her to start driving. Panicked, Hannah screamed at him to get out of the car. She managed to drive a short distance before stopping next to a man who was outside washing his car. Desperate, she screamed for help. "Call the police. He's going to kill me. He's poured petrol on me." The man turned to see Rowan holding Hannah down, preventing her from escaping. She struggled against him, but Rowan remained eerily calm, completely in control. Then, in an instant, Hannah managed to break free and scrambled out of the car. But by then, Rowan had already set everything ablaze. Flames engulfed her. The man immediately sprang into action. Seeing Hannah engulfed in flames, he shouted for her to roll on the ground while grabbing a hose to extinguish the fire. Once Hannah was no longer burning, he turned his attention to Rowan, dousing the flames that had caught onto his body. As the shock of the situation set in, Hannah screamed something about her children. Realizing what she was saying, the man ran into his house to call emergency services. By the time he returned, another bystander, Samantha, had arrived at the scene. She had been driving when she noticed the thick black smoke and flames. Rushing over, she picked up the hose and continued trying to put out the fire. Samantha stayed with Hannah, comforting her as they waited for emergency responders. Hannah, still in agony, kept asking about her children. Nearby, another neighbor, Carrie Fernandez, heard Hannah's desperate cries for help. As soon as she saw the burning vehicle, she called emergency services and remained on the line with dispatchers. As she spoke, the car erupted into a massive fireball. Grabbing a fire extinguisher, Carrie raced toward the vehicle, desperately trying to fight the flames. The intense heat caused the car to roll backward. As people yelled at her to be careful, Hannah, barely able to stand, screamed in pure anguish, "My kids!" Investigators later discovered that Rowan had placed the jerry can full of fuel directly in front of Aaliyah's seat, ensuring the explosion occurred right at her feet. Although Rowan himself had no fuel on him, each of the children did. So did Hannah. As the fire raged, Rowan suddenly dived back into the burning car. For a moment, it seemed as though he was trying to save the children, but instead, he reached for something before jumping back out. A bystander saw what Rowan had taken from the car, a knife. Realizing what was happening, he shouted a warning to Carrie Fernandez, who was still battling the flames with the fire extinguisher. She quickly backed away as Rowan, now armed, prepared to make his final move. Without hesitation, Rowan knelt on the ground, positioned the tip of the knife against his chest, and fell forward onto it. He curled into a fetal position and died shortly after. The devastation he had unleashed was irreversible. In a single morning, Rowan had taken the lives of his 3 children, Aaliyah, Liana, and Trey, and left Hannah with burns covering nearly her entire body. Even as emergency responders arrived, Hannah's mind remained on her children. She kept asking, "Are they okay? Did someone get them out?" But paramedics knew the truth. There was nothing they could say that would ease her pain. Instead, they urged her to focus on herself, knowing she had little time left. Before she lost consciousness, Hannah called her father. When Lloyd Clark picked up, he heard only silence. Assuming it was a pocket dial, perhaps from one of the kids, he hung up. It wasn't until later that he realized the heartbreaking truth. It had been Hannah, unable to speak, making one last attempt to reach out to her dad. At 4:50 p.m. that same day, Hannah succumbed to her injuries. She was the last in her family to die. After Rowan's death, authorities found a chilling note on his phone. It read, "I'm finishing your game. I don't want to play anymore. You can't mess with someone's life like this and expect them to take it. I have told the kids that you love them. They will miss you, I'm sure." Autopsy reports revealed the full horror of what had happened. Hannah died from multi-organ failure due to the severity of her burns. Aaliyah, only 6 years old, suffered burns over 100% of her body. Her blood showed toxic levels of carbon monoxide, but that was not what killed her. This meant she had been alive when the flames consumed her. Liana, just 4 years old, perished from a combination of direct burns, smoke inhalation, and other combustion-related injuries. Trey, barely 2 years old, suffered the same fate. Rowan, who had stabbed himself in the heart, had no alcohol or drugs in his system. His brain showed no signs of disease or injury, proving that his monstrous actions were not the result of a mental breakdown, but of calculated, cold-blooded intent. The horror of February 19, 2020, sent shockwaves across Australia. For many, it exposed a hard truth: coercive control, the insidious form of emotional and psychological abuse that Rowan had used against Hannah for years, was not well understood or recognized as domestic violence. On March 9, 2020, Hannah, Aaliyah, Liana, and Trey were laid to rest, together in a single coffin. Her brother, devastated by the loss, spoke these final words: "I am so sorry I couldn't protect you." Thanks for tuning in to Unreal True Crime. If you're intrigued by mysteries from around the world, check out our new channel, Latin Crimes, where we dive into the gripping true crime stories of Latin America. Don't miss out. Subscribe now for more thrilling investigations.